Welcome back to another ukulele fingerstyle chord melody. I'm Lara, and today I'm sharing with you my arrangement of the Christmas song, also known as Merry Christmas to You. This song was made famous by Nat King Cole, and it's a beautiful song to play fingerstyle. This arrangement is for low G tuning. You'll find the tabs on screen as I play through the chord melody and through the tutorial. You can also download the tabs as a PDF from my Patreon page, and you'll find the link down in the video description. First, I'm going to play through this melody, and then we'll have a short tutorial where I'll walk you through tips on how to play some of the more challenging chords and sections of this arrangement. Then you can come back and play along with me as the tabs will be on screen. Now let's get started. I'll count us in on 5, 6, 7, 8. If you're enjoying this arrangement, please give this video a like, and thank you so much for subscribing. Now we're moving into our tutorial section. I'm going to put a link above to my lesson on reading tablature, so if you're not familiar with tabs, then check that out first. Now let's move forward with our tutorial, where I'll give you lots of helpful tips on how to play this melody. The first thing I want to point out is that there are many arpeggios throughout this melody. An arpeggio is a broken chord, and it's noted by the squiggly arrow next to the chord. So for example, if we're playing a regular C chord, instead of doing a traditional down strum, we would play an arpeggio more slowly so that each string rings out. As we look at each arpeggio, it's important to note how many strings are actually played. For example, in the first measure, we have a G7 chord, and we see fret numbers on all 4 strings, so we know that we play this arpeggio through all of the strings. Then we move into measure 2, where we have a C chord, and notice that we have zeros on strings 4, 3, and 2, but there is nothing on the first string, so that first string is not played. So we play this arpeggio only through the second string. Now starting on our first measure, here's our first arpeggio on G7, then our next arpeggio on C, then we have 2 triplets. The count for these triplets is 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So counting along while I play the notes is 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Note that the open first string, this note is held for 2 beats, so it carries over from the last note in the first triplet to the first note in the second triplet. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Next, I want to point out the F minor chord in measure 5. This chord can be a little tricky to master, so it helps me to remember that this fingering is similar to a G chord with an added pinky. So if we look at our standard G chord, we're essentially moving it back 1 fret and up 1 string. Then we're adding on our pinky. So I have my middle finger and index finger on the first fret of strings 2 and 4, and my ring finger on the second fret of string 3. Then I'm adding on my pinky to the third fret of the first string. Next, I want to highlight measure 7. We're starting this measure with an E chord, covering the 4th fret on strings 2, 3, and 4. We'll play an arpeggio through the second string, and then pick the second string. Then we're moving to a B flat chord. Next, we're going to place our pinky down on the 4th fret of the second string, and then move it down to the 3rd fret, and then we'll lift our pinky up, and then we're going to lift up our index finger and place our ring finger down. So now we're playing a partial G chord, and we're going to play this arpeggio through the second string. Next, we're jumping over to measure 12. We're starting off on an F chord, but this is a variation because we have our melody note on the second string. So I have my middle finger on the second fret of the 4th string and my pinky on the 3rd fret of the second string. We'll play this arpeggio through the second string, then we'll pick the 4th string, the second string, and then we'll lift up our pinky and place down our index finger on the 1st fret of the second string to form our standard F chord. Measure 14 starts off the same way as measure 12. And then we have 2 natural harmonics. The first is on the 12th fret of the 3rd string, and then the next is on the 12th fret of the 1st string. You can play these harmonics with your index finger and your thumb. You'll want to rest your index finger gently on the string, and then you'll pick the string with your thumb a few inches behind your index finger. You may need to experiment with the distance between your thumb and your index finger to get the best sound. Once you pick the string with your thumb, then you'll immediately lift up your index finger. For measure 15, I'm placing my index finger down on the 1st fret of the 4th string and my pinky on the 4th fret of the 2nd string to play this first arpeggio. Then we're going to pick several notes on the 2nd string. So moving up to the 6th fret, then back down to the 4th fret. Next, I'm using my ring finger to play the 3rd fret, and index finger to play the 1st fret. For the last note in measure 15, I'm placing my ring finger down on the 3rd fret of the 3rd string. Moving into measure 16, I've kept my index finger and ring fingers in place from the final 2 notes that we picked in measure 15. Now I'm going to place my middle finger down on the 3rd fret of the 4th string to play the arpeggio that begins measure 16. Then I'll pick string 4, 3, and 2. Next, I want to highlight measure 17. We're starting off this measure with a D7 chord. I have my middle and index fingers on the 2nd fret of strings 2 and 4, and my pinky on the 5th fret of the 1st string. Then I'm going to pick the 1st string 3 times, Then I'm going to move my middle finger to the 4th fret of the 2nd string and my index finger to the 3rd fret of the 3rd string. Note that this arpeggio does not include the 4th string, so we're starting on the 3rd string and playing strings 3, 2, and 1. For measure 18, I'm going to move my middle and index fingers back 1 fret, and we'll play this arpeggio through all 4 strings. As we continue on with measure 18, our index and middle fingers are already in place for the next arpeggio, so we just have to lift up our pinky and play this arpeggio through the 2nd string and continue on. My final tip for you is on the last phrase of this song. We're starting at the end of measure 24 on the 3rd fret of the 1st string. Then we're going to pick the open 1st string, and then we're going to an F minor variation at the beginning of measure 25. So I have my index finger on the 1st fret of the 4th string, and my pinky is playing the melody note on the 3rd fret of the 2nd string. We'll play this arpeggio through the 2nd string, and then our next note is going to be the 3rd fret of the 1st string. You can play this either by pressing your pinky down on this fret, or by moving your pinky in position to that fret. Next, we're going to form our G7 chord and pick strings 4 down to 1. And then we're ending on a C chord that's higher up the neck. So I'm placing my index finger on the 7th fret of the 1st string and my middle finger on the 8th fret of the 2nd string. We'll play this arpeggio on all 4 strings with the 1st string ringing out the loudest. I hope you've enjoyed learning my arrangement of the Christmas song. Happy holidays, and thank you for watching.